It's funny. Religions rarely begin with just an idea. They almost always begin with a person. Have you ever stopped to wonder why that is? Why do these massive systems of belief and culture seem to hook themselves not to an abstract principle, but to the story of one single extraordinary life? So let's really dig into that question. Here's the roadmap for today. First, we're going to explore this deep-seated human need for a hero. Then we'll look at the surprisingly consistent playbook their stories almost always follow. We'll also break down the key types of founders: king, prophet, or hero. And finally, we'll tackle the big one: what happens to a movement after its hero is gone? All right, so first up, that fundamental question. Why do we seem to need a person, a face, at the very center of our belief systems? I mean, really think about it. It's a pattern we see across pretty much every culture and every time period. So what is it about a person that's so essential for making a powerful idea feel, well, trustworthy? Well, the answer is pretty psychological. Ideas like truth or justice or salvation, they're huge, they're powerful, but they're also abstract. A founder makes all of that tangible. They become a living, breathing focal point. Their life is the template to copy, their words are the commands to obey, and their story becomes living proof that the big ideas can actually connect with our world. Okay, so if the founder is the living example, how is their story shaped to be so compelling? Because these figures don't just pop up out of nowhere. Their authority is very carefully constructed through a very specific kind of narrative. You could almost call it a hero's playbook. And this is a really, really crucial distinction to make. These figures don't build their legitimacy with the kind of evidence we might expect today, scientific data or peer-reviewed studies. No, their authority comes from the power of their story, from its internal logic, its symbolic depth, and its raw ability to inspire absolute loyalty. And what is just fascinating is how universal this story pattern is. I mean, look at these elements: an extraordinary birth, a period of testing out in the wilderness, getting pushback from the establishment, and then finally being proven right, usually after their death. Whether we're talking about a prophet, a mythical hero, or even a modern political revolutionary, their stories hit these same beats. This is not a coincidence, folks. It is a blueprint for building authority that just resonates deep inside all of us. So while these founders might share a story structure, the source of their authority can be totally different. This is where we need to understand the specific roles they play. Let's break down the three main archetypes. First, you've got the divine king. Think of ancient pharaohs or emperors. Their right to rule isn't based on what they've done, but on who they are. Their authority is inherited, passed down through a sacred bloodline that supposedly connects them right to the divine. It's an authority of being. Next up is the chosen prophet. Now, unlike the king, the prophet's authority has nothing to do with their family tree. It comes from a direct, personal encounter with the divine. They're justified by a message they have been chosen to deliver. Theirs is an authority based on revelation. And finally, there's the moral hero. This figure's authority isn't inherited or revealed. Nope, it's earned. It comes from the sheer power of their actions and the ethical purity of the life they lived. They become a leader simply because their example is so powerful that people feel they have to follow. This is an authority of action. And this table just lays out the core difference so clearly. It all comes down to where their legitimacy comes from. Was it because of who they were born as, what they heard from on high, or what they actually did? Each one of these creates a totally different kind of community. But this leads to a massive problem. A problem that every single one of these movements eventually has to solve, no matter what kind of founder they had. Think about it. Authority that's tied to a single living person is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly fragile. So what happens when that person dies? How on earth does the movement survive? The answer is that the founder's personal charisma, that lightning in a bottle, has to be captured and transformed into something that cannot last them. And that something is an institution. The movement has to shift from being all about a person to being about a system. And here's basically how that shift happens. First, the founder's spoken words are collected and written down into sacred texts. Second, a special group of people, priests, scholars, leaders, are given the exclusive authority to interpret those texts. And third, over time, the tradition of interpreting them itself becomes sacred, which makes the institution the unshakable guardian of the founder's original legacy. So, at the end of the day, these founder figures and the institutions built around them don't just survive because of faith. They survive because they work.
They are functionally successful. They solve fundamental human and social problems.
I mean, they give a belief system legitimacy. They put a human face on what would otherwise be abstract authority. They give a whole community a stable identity and a single unifying story. And, this is so important, they create a narrative that is very, very hard to change, which provides stability for generations. So maybe the big takeaway here isn't about proving or disproving the divine claims of any one founder. Instead, looking at this pattern shows us something really profound about ourselves. These heroic figures, they're evidence of a deep human need to make our most important ideas and values tangible, personal, and above all, lasting. It's how we, as humans, make meaning durable.